So, hey, Jerry, ever wonder what happens when someone comes in to interview for a job here at the restaurant?
You know, that's fascinating. What are the kind of questions that you ask a person when they come in and they want to interview?
Well, first of all, I want to know where that person has worked so that in my mind, I have a little idea of what their skill level is, what their expertise is, what type of service they offer if they're interviewing for a service job.
Makes sense. So if somebody's coming in to interview as a waiter, once we know kind of where they came from, what their background is, what are the questions we're asking and why?
Sometimes I ask technical questions, and once they pass all that, I'll ask them questions like, name 3 grapes from which red wine is made from. And you know, it's a difficult question for some who have not worked around wine. And it's an easy question for anyone who has worked in wine.
As not a drinker, I would have not a clue.
Well, it's funny because I also use it as a teachable moment, because if that person wants a place where they can grow and learn, I'm happy to share. And you'll know by their reaction once I ask that question. So the answer to that question, and I'll say, you probably already know these answers, but I'll say Merlot is a type of grape. Cabernet is a type of grape. Pinot Noir is a type of grape. And they're like, oh, and then it like clicks. So, you know, it's a teachable moment, and it's also something that you have gotten that you know that they know the basics of what you want to teach.
Sure, that makes sense. Okay, so then what are the questions that come after that? What are we asking about food?
So if we ask about food, we'll say a question like, what is a curry? What's in a curry? And then they tell you, you know, either technically what's in a curry, or they'll say, I don't know. Or you ask them what's gluten-free.
Do you expect most experienced waiters to be able to tell you what's in a curry?
If they have that background.
Sure.
If they have that background. And a curry, the answer is it's just a mixture of spices. So, you know, they can either have that or not. One of the questions we ask about martinis are, what are the 3 questions you ask someone when they want to order a martini? And it's another teachable moment, because you ask them if they want it straight up or on the rocks. You ask them if they want what kind of garnish they want, whether it be a twist or an olive. And you ask them if they want it with gin or vodka, because both are martinis.
Touche.
Yeah, no. Well, a lot of times people come away with it. I want them to come away from interviewing here with a little bit of knowledge too. That way they can either want to work at a place where they'll better themselves, or they walk away with, you know, oh, that place was too hard, I'm not in it, I'm not into it. And you can tell a lot by the reaction of someone when they...
Do you think the reaction is more important to you than the knowledge?
100%. 100%. And you can have someone who's really chatty that you think, oh, they'll never study for your test, or they'll never, because we do have a server test that we give them after their training. But you think they're going to be too chatty, and they can ace the test. And I love those types of people, because guests really love it when there's a lot of talking.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting. You said chatty, and I thought, well, I've had chatty waiters that drive me bonkers, and then I've had chatty waiters that I'm like, oh, they're fascinating. They always have a story to tell.
Yeah.
I think that's the difference. If they have a great story to tell, then chatty works. And if they don't have much to say, then chatty kind of drives you crazy.
Well, ultimately, you want them to buy into your business and the way you do things, and your story that you want your guests to know.
Well, I think that's what a restaurant does, really, is you tell a story. You tell a story from the moment you walk in the door, right? We tell a story of service, of care, we create a feeling for people in a restaurant, wouldn't you say? And then from there, the story is on a plate.
Yep.
You know, is creating this art, especially if you're coming to a nice restaurant to have something to eat.
We can usually teach the details, but we can't teach the way people interact. So whenever I interview, I always look for questions that show me what happens when the server or the prospective employee is put in a position where they're a little uncomfortable, and then they either shine and come through and be very positive, or they buckle.
That makes sense. What other question do you ask that helps you to make a decision on whether or not to hire a server to work in your restaurant?
My favorite question to ask, and my number one question at the end of every interview, is tell me about your favorite guests. And it's going through your mind, I see, but that I'll get so many different answers for this, and people usually want clarity. They come to me and they'll look at me and they'll say, you mean my favorite kind of customer, or my favorite kind of guest, or my favorite person? And I said, I'll leave it up to you. Answer it however you want to. And that always gives me a great idea of what type of server that is, because if someone is trying to answer the right question, they'll say something like, oh, it's a customer that likes to spend a lot of money, or oh, a customer that will buy whatever I sell. And that's not always the answer that I look for, because I look for people who develop relationships with their customers. So the perfect answer for me and for my restaurant is the answer, oh, Jerry comes in 3 times a week, and I always remember what he drinks, I always remember what he eats, and I'll remember the people that he comes in with. I've watched his kids grow up, and that kind of answer is what really talks to me, because it shows that the employee loves to develop relationships with their guests.
Yeah, you want somebody who's invested in the people that love your restaurant.
Yes.
That's awesome. So, after the interview, after training, what comes next?
Well, we train for, it's usually a week to 10 days, and then the server has to take a test. It's a written test. And they also have to take a reverse follow, which is they lead and one of our employees follows them to watch them at the table to make sure that everything they've learned, from the way they answer the phone to the way they approach the table, is up to our standards. Because each server that works here wants their guests to come back if someone else is taking care of them. So that's their test. And the written test is a 3-hour test.
3 hours?
Here at my restaurant. And it covers questions from, what regulars like to eat to standard operating procedures for us, and, just details on the food.
So I hope you guys will stick around, check it out. We've got another video on the channel where Chef Dennis walks us through the questions on the server exam.